All right, so while things are getting going this morning and we've got our water filtration going and everything else, I had a great question last night um, that I wanted to address, which is how big is Dune Awakening? How big is it? How long is the campaign? Like, how much playtime am I going to get out? Am I going to get out of this game? So some of that is going to be dependent on how heavily you get into the harvesting and crafting side of the game, base building side of the game. Because as we saw from my yesterday's I did two streams. I played 12 hours yesterday, two different streams. I spent probably 10 hours just doing harvesting and base building to build the second story of my abode, to build the vehicle manufacturing facility, to get my wind trap up and going right there, to build the garage down here and the tunnel stairway going up. Like, if you get into that side of the game, you're definitely going to get, way more playtime out of it than just running like the basic storyline. But the reality is that you have to do a certain amount of crafting survival to get to the story elements as well. So, um, how big is the game is difficult to answer, but I can say the estimates right now are that the main storyline is 80 to 100 hours of gameplay for the primary story. That's the single player solo story that you complete, which is done via the journeys. So that's like, following the spice dreams. So if you go into your journey tab, this is the story. So if you follow all of these, and by the way, these are not all of the stories available. So more of these, so like the Vermilius Gap, Jabali Freet, and Haga Rip, those open up when you get to the zones. I don't have all of those zones unlocked yet, so therefore I don't have all of these quests here. But the main one here is you have Find the Fremen is a main storyline as an example. So the fifth trial of Akil, which is what we're going to do this morning. As soon as I wrap up this section of the video, we're going to continue the stream. Of course, we're going to be working on the story of Akil, which is the fifth trial. Um, so the the I can tell you where I'm at right now. So this first area, the Haga Basin South, that's that giant rectangle right here. That represents roughly 20 to 30 hours of gameplay. That's the tutorial of the game. That is roughly 20 to 30 hours. It teaches you everything you need to know about crafting, base building, survival. It teaches you about shipwrecks. It teaches you about the Imperial testing stations, the eco labs. It teaches you about how to make your sand bike. It teaches you about respawning. It teaches you about the sandworm. It teaches you about the sandstorms. This is all the beginning area. This is 20 to 30 hours of content. I say 20 to 30 hours because it depends on do you do all the contracts? Because at the trading post, the Griffin's Reach trade post, apart from the main story, you have side quests, which are the contracts that you get from the trading posts. Do you do those? That's an additional 10 hours of content, more or less. So, and then there's like, do you visit every single map location on the map? Like, because right now I'm so if you notice I'm scanned out, you don't see all the POIs. You scan in, you start seeing more POIs. You scan even further. Oh, now suddenly we see crafting resources. Scan even further. You know what I mean? Like, so there's tons of stuff to explore and do. 20 to 30 hours for that. Then we have the next two zones, which is the Western Vermilius Gap and the Eastern Vermilius Gap. I am still in this location. I have spent probably an additional 20 hours here so far, and I have not finished. Excuse me. I've done the three Imperial testing stations. I have been working on resource gathering, building my base out. I got to tier 3 resources yesterday. I unlocked, or I should say I surveyed the Haga Basin map, which is this massive rift that is like a giant upside down L. And then I have gone up into the Jabal Ifrit Al Janub. And if you look at these blue question mark, these blue little notes, these blue notes are quests which I picked up from the Anvil um, trading post. Those are those contract quests. I have not finished those contract quests. I would estimate I probably have another 10 hours, more or less, of contracts to finish up. And some of those contracts are taking me up into a zone I haven't even explored yet, which is, again, part of the Haga Basin map. These are two different zones. We have the Eastern Shield Wall. Oh, by the way, this is Pinnacle Station. That's another trading post that it is sending me to. So 20 to 30 hours in the first zone, another 20 to 30 hours in the second zones right here. That's arguably 40 to 60 hours of gameplay, depending on main story and side quests. I would look at each one of these zones and say, depending on everything you can expect to see 20-ish hours of content for each one of the zones in the Haga Basin. And the Haga Basin is made up of all of these zones, many of which are still covered by the Fog of War. Sheol, like all of this is still there's Sheol, there's Misatarl, there's the Odam, Western Shield Wall, Eastern Shield Wall, Jabal Ifrit Al Garb, Jabal Ifrit Al Sharq. What else? I think that might be the last one over there. So that's all this. I was reading this morning in Discord. There are people who have done all of this stuff before that I have not. I did not pursue all of this in closed beta. There are people that are saying just the northern areas once you get to Pinnacle Station. I was reading this morning, people say that when you get to Pinnacle Station, there's roughly 200 hours of content in the northern reaches of the game with quests and contracts before you ever even get to the deep desert. So let's ignore that estimate for a minute and look at the first estimate that people have, which is 80 to 100 hours for the main storyline, and then an additional, let's say that they're exaggerating, and there's an additional 100 hours of gameplay with the contracts. Because each time I've come to a station, I have seen roughly 10 hours of content from each trading post. And I don't know how many other trading posts there are. I haven't explored this. But let's say that that 200-hour estimate is ridiculously exaggerated. Um, and let's say it's just 100 hours. At the very least, you're going to get 80 to 100 hours of main storyline gameplay and another 80 to 100 hours of side content storylines outside of the crafting and base building side of the game, which is another massive aspect of this game where you get all of these base building and everything else. That's several hundred hours of content, which you get for the cost of the game. You don't have to pay a monthly subscription for that. That's just included in your purchase. Then they have, Joel said, so there's already 4 DLCs planned, which are part of the Ultimate Edition. Those have additional storylines associated with them. And Joel and Ole were talking about this the other day. There are story patches that they're going to be releasing every few months, which include additional storyline tied to the main story of the game, which pushes that story forward. So there's even more story content coming. And outside of all of that, if you get bored with all of that, there's the Deep Desert, which has the Landsrad. I don't remember the tab to pull up the Landsrad, to be honest with you. I know it's in here somewhere. Um, Social, maybe? No. Yeah, there it is. There it is. That was it. Then there's the Landsrad, which is this is where you get into the end game and you start doing these weekly rotational. There's like 400 things to do that rotate every single week to do in the deep desert. And that's where you get the weekly quests, the guild versus guild and the PvP and the deep desert. By the way, the map that we're seeing right here in Haga Basin, I forget the estimate of how much bigger. I think there's 80. Someone said I think there's 81 quadrants in the deep desert. It's massive. The deep desert is way bigger than this entire map. Like this entire map, this is the Haga Basin. All of this is the Haga Basin. This vertical rectangle is the Haga Basin. Everything beyond here, everything up there, that's the deep desert, where there is an additional, who knows how much content, depending on how much you want to get into that end game. So, how big is Dune Awakening? Main story, 80 to 100 hours. Side story, another 100 hours. Base building and crafting, tack on another few hundred hours depending on how crazy you go with your bases because you can have up to 3 bases. Then there's all the vehicle building and everything else. And then on top of that, there's all of the deep desert stuff. So no monthly subscription, buy to play, free to play. I just, you know, I got my money's worth already. you know, like it's not rocket science for me. But anyway, hopefully that answers people's questions.